we have so many hit and runs, because the ones that do that, none of them have insurance. That's probably why they all take off.
I think that is a significant factor in the dynamic on hit and runs. I recently supported another set of bills around driver's license for immigrants. I believe in this as a social justice issue. Up until 2008, immigrants and other folks who were not able to prove their existence in the U.S. in the same way you and I might be able to, were able to get driver's licenses. That meant they were able to get insurance for their vehicles. And so now we have a whole population of people who are critical to our community's economy. In my county, Kent County alone, those folks contribute $3 million a year to our economy. And across the state, we're dependent on people for a workforce. But those folks are driving uninsured. And what are you going to do if you have an accident and you're in that situation? One more question, and then I got a few more points I have to make.
Okay, so you're basically saying that if you get in an accident, your insurance is going to go up instead of coming down.
That's already the case.
Because
There's already a huge problem in Michigan. This law does nothing to change.
yeah, but now so it will be even more yet.
It might, but anybody who's making
Even
a
if
claim
the
on an
accident
insurance
ain't your
policy
fault, it's still
today
your
or
fault.
last year, their rates were going up.
Yeah, but in the past, if you got in an accident that wasn't your fault, your rates did not go up.
I don't think that's true.
I think I do it personally with me. It did not go up. But if the accident,
other person wasn't moving correctly.
if the accident is your fault, definitely it would go up. But now you're saying with this no fault reduction, if you get into an accident, your rate's going to keep right on climbing.
It doesn't stop rates from climbing after you've been in an accident, and depending on what insurance product you choose, knowingly or unknowingly, because this is incredibly difficult to navigate, right?
Yeah, well, you don't.
You're lucky to
understand
be
the
here
issues that
and to be
person-
learning about it and getting the red flag, right? But there are hundreds of people in this community who are not spending 2 hours to learn about the changes to this policy. So then you may unexpectedly have increased healthcare costs as well that are not covered as a result of an accident.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. Rep. Lozinski, did you want to share your insight into, you mentioned it a little bit. She's,
Very quickly, yeah.
so as I mentioned, my sons are 18, 20, and 22. My 22-year-old just got off the payroll, just got his first job, graduated from college. But what that means is he's living in Illinois, so he can't afford a car. He takes the bus to work. And when he comes home for Thanksgiving in a week from now, if I get in a car accident with my son in the car, my insurance will not cover him because he will not have his own car insurance. He will not have anything to cover him. So your own child who's in your car, my 22-year-old still feels very much like my child, will not be covered under my auto insurance anymore after this change.
Is that a big difference from?
You can put them on as a rider though.
Yeah.
So what you can do is, if I decide to purchase $1 million umbrella policy and he sues me, then I will be able to cover his injury. But he will have to sue me. Right now, unlimited, because of the state that we're in and how our law was written, it meant that anyone in your car when you got in an accident was covered under your policy. That will no longer be true.
That's
Even
not
out-of-state
clear, yeah.
drivers.
Yeah. So right now, if somebody is from out of state and you injure them in our state, like you hit someone who's coming, driving up from Ohio up to Yakima, and you hit them, it used to be that you're unlimited. That was considered one of these types of drivers that Rep. Hood was just talking about. Out-of-state drivers were considered that, and your policy handled it. That no longer happens. Unlimited will only cover you and the immediate children or dependents who live in your household. It will not cover the kids in your carpool. It will not cover grown children. It will not cover anyone else anymore.
No, I'm reading from the thing I just got. It's dated August 19 from the state, and it says a no-fault policy covers the whole family. A no-fault policy covers all family members living in the same house.
Yeah.
Personal injury protection benefits will be paid even when a family member is a passenger in another person's car or is a pedestrian when an accident takes place. The personal injury protection coverage of your no-fault policy also covers anyone who does not have a no-fault policy and is hurt as a passenger or pedestrian in an accident involving your car. That's what we have right now.
That's what we have right now, so so what we're saying is once you choose one of those, you
New
choose only-
policies, that will not happen anymore.
Ooh, that's gotta be made clear.
Yeah.
What if you don't fix the policy?
What if you don't choose a new policy?
Yeah.
Then the insurance company will likely put you into some lower level policy that's roughly the same price as your current one, and they'll try and notify you. But you know, if you're like my family and you're a little bit busy, you might not get that mail, and you'll just pay the bill, and you won't understand what happened until after the fact. Yeah. Yep. So just make note of that, because you want to make sure that the people you love are paying attention to this issue, right? So start spreading the word. Invite people to your church to talk about this issue. We've got to get each other educated, and we've got to activate and make sure that we are represented as some of the fixes to this bill come in front of us over the coming months. And I'll wrap up with a few things that we're looking at fixing. So while the law and the changes are clearly not perfect, we have a lot of work ahead of us to make sure that Michiganders have the coverage that they need at the best possible and affordable rates. The three of us are part of a work group that continues to develop solutions to the problem, to address the law. Everything from technical language needs to be cleaned up so that departments have clear direction on regulations and enforcement. Among the list of fixes that are still concerns that we have identified, and I think we're all, concerned we may not have identified everything, and some of this is, of course, going to have to go through the courts, but we want to tighten language for potential abuse of discriminatory non-driving factors related to the credit reports, consumer data, and insurance. While the term credit score is in the language, there's the potential to use other credit-related data to determine your rates based on your credit score or something like it. We need to strengthen and tighten the language restricting the use of territory, as was mentioned earlier. We need to prohibit insurers from using price optimization. We need to ensure rollbacks are capped to the rate of inflation or the medical rate of inflation, so that after the 8 years that this bill covers, we aren't back where we started with insurance policy increases again. We need to monitor new fee schedule implementation to make adjustments as necessary and tweak the cost of service to ensure that they're sustainable and also increasing with the rate of inflation. Right now, we'll talk about this later, secondary rehab, which is another reason why I voted no. I have 2 rehab facilities in my district. They are reimbursed at 55% of Medicaid, which means they're going to go out of business. Here we are in the state of Michigan. We have some of the best rehab programs in the country, and those are all threatened now because the industry is no longer supported as a result of this bill. I was also assigned the work of educating folks about reporting fraud. So the bill does take steps to address insurer, health provider, and attorney abuses that were allowed to exist in the current system. One of the cost control measures for auto insurance reform is fraud prevention. The Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services, or DIFS, is responsible for oversight of the auto insurance reform. And consumers can report concerns about fraud from policy rate hikes that aren't consistent with the implication of the law, charges for medical procedures that weren't conducted, or wrongful insurer denials. You can file a complaint online if you suspect fraud. You can email diffs. There's a hotline, a toll-free number, 1-877-899-6442. Excuse me, 877-999-6422. You can speak to an individual about your concerns. If you need that number, just come up to me later. Several residents have reached out to our offices about increases to their auto insurance policies ahead of implementation, and so all of those increases need to be reported to the diffs line. If your auto insurance has gone up $100 over the last month or so, that happened to my family. We just renegotiated and found another insurance carrier because of that. And then the folks at diffs are saying that they really need people to report this because they can't investigate it otherwise. So out on the table is a guide to resolving insurance problems from diffs, and it would be a good idea to grab this on your way out so you have all of those details and means to report. And I think I can now pass it to my colleague. So we know car accidents are just that, accidents. They're not predictable, they're unexpected, and we like to think they're not going to happen to us, but we know well enough that it could happen through, unintentional errors, through weather, and so we need to be prepared. So I'm hosting this today not to scare people, but to make sure that you're making informed decisions, because these are going to come down to choices that you will have to make in the coming years. We want you to be informed. We want you to be able to ask the right questions as you're comparing different policies, to make sure that what you're comparing is apples to apples and not apples to oranges. We know a lot of people are making decisions because they're just overly taxed financially, and they feel like they need a discount. In order to be insured, they need a discount. However, what I hope you're realizing is that Michigan has been one of the highest, most expensive states for auto insurance. But we've also had, over 30 years of premium auto insurance provisions. So we've paid for it, but we've gotten what we've had. We're opening it up at the request of people to have more choices, but again, with choice, you're giving up some of that premium coverage. So making sure you have what you need for yourself and your family, and be aware of what these other options might include or exclude. We voted no on this bill because we saw some of these glaring loopholes. Not because we don't care about affordable insurance. We've been, from the day I was elected, I had a crash course in Auto Insurance 101 in order to make educated decisions on this issue. And what was brought to us by the leadership was something that they thought would please what people wanted. But we agreed that this was not what people are asking for. And I think that's what I'm hearing from some of these questions and some of these comments. Yes, we wanted discounts, but this isn't what we thought we would be getting. So we continue to see there's short-term solutions and long-term solutions as there's changes in leadership and decision-making and agenda-making at the state level and the legislature. There very well might be differences in what auto insurance policy looks like going forward. So keep that in mind. But we have been requested by many community organizations as well as constituents who have been impacted by catastrophic car accidents in the past to continue to what we say, fix the fix. So we fixed auto insurance from those high rates, and now we have a new auto no fault, and it's not perfect, and we've got a ways to go.
So I'm going to hand it over. We have three community members who have some additional thoughts I want you to keep in mind.
Hi, I'm Donna Jones, and I am a mother of a survivor who is my son right here, Brad Jones. And back when the accident happened 16 years ago, you know, I myself was saying, well, we're paying such high insurance, this and that. But then again, I am thanking God that we did have this type of insurance. And I will give you the mic to my son. Thank you.
Hi, but I'm thankful for my life, very thankful for the insurance company to pay for my therapies, and I wouldn't be here without them. So, thank you.
I'd like to hand it off to Steve and Tim. They bring both a legal perspective and a rehabilitative perspective to this issue.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for everyone coming out tonight. It's easy to stay at home, turn on our TVs, look at our phones, not get out here and be together as people. So thank you for coming out. This is a very important issue. It's one that I care a whole lot about. I came from Lansing just to talk to you guys about it. I wish I had about 2 hours to talk to you about this. I got a few minutes, okay? So I'm going to try to touch on what I think are the most important points for you to leave here with. First of all, when it comes down to this law, I'm just going to be very frank about it. I'm totally opposed to it. It's not just the details of the problem, it's the fundamental premise of the reforms that are the problem. The details are a problem too, but make no mistake about it. This law was a giant mistake. And I want to tell you why I'm saying that. I'm not just saying it for no reason, okay? First and foremost, who here thinks that our legislature should have public hearings before they pass major laws? And who here thinks that our legislators should read the laws that they pass? I mean, you know, we have so much division in this country about, you know, red and blue, conservative, liberal, people think and all that stuff. But I think that one common point that everybody would agree on, that our lawmakers should read the laws they pass. And so just let me tell you this story about this law real quick. On, I believe it was May 25th, they called this special session where they passed this bill. This bill was a conglomeration of other bills that they hastily passed, but they had significantly modified any other bill they passed. And I was there at the Capitol. I've been on the front lines of this reform debate for many years, and I was there, and I think they voted around 2 o'clock. This bill came out, no, this is on the signing day. Now keep in mind, they had no warning before they voted on the first bill, okay? So there's no public hearings there. They had to vote at 2 a.m. on the first bill. And then they take the Senate bill and the House bill and they put it together, and that's what became this law. And nobody in the Capitol had read the new version. And I'm standing there asking legislators, have you seen the bill? No, I haven't seen the bill. Everyone's voting for it. Oh, everyone's voting up, I haven't seen it. And they roll out this cart of bills, copies of the bill. It's 120 pages thick. They start passing around, and then within 45 minutes or so, they're voting on it. And people are reading this bill in the hallways. We're seeing that they're totally reforming how auto insurance should operate here in Michigan. And so from a starting point, nobody should support these laws because the people who voted for it didn't actually read it, and most of them don't understand all the ins and outs of what they passed. So that's my first point about why this law is bad. The second point has to do with rates. Can everyone agree that the real reason why we needed reforms was because of rates? Is that everyone's biggest problem with their insurance?
Yes.
Right? It's not like you have a problem being told that you have all your reasonable needs covered if you're in an accident, right? That doesn't strike you to be a problem. Right. It's the bill, right? Let me make this really clear. This law does not guarantee that the total cost of your auto insurance is going to go down. I'm not saying that anybody before me didn't say or said anything inconsistent with regard to that, but I just want to drill this down in your head. This law does not guarantee that the cost of anyone's insurance is going to go down, even if you bought the most cheapest no-fault policy. So the idea that this law is going to result in people's insurance being lower is not true. And here's why. Because the guarantee reduction is only tied to the line item on your declaration page attributed to no-fault insurance. Does anyone understand what a declaration page is? It's that first page you get from your insurance company when they renew your policy, you buy a new policy, they send you the policy, but there's that first page that itemizes everything you're buying and how much it costs. If you look, and you go home and look at it, you're going to see there are these line items that connect to different forms of coverage. This law only guarantees that the no-fault coverage is going to go down. But here's the real kicker. The other ways they change the law could cause other line items to go up. And the insurance industry has acknowledged this. And this gets at the other major reason why I am opposed to these laws is that it changes the fundamental way we deal with the problem of automobile crashes. Automobile crashes are a problem, and they're complicated, right? They're complicated in terms of how they happen. They're complicated in terms of the injuries people sustain. And they're complicated in terms of figuring out how everything's going to be paid for. So I don't have the time to go through the history I normally go through with people about the no-fault law. But let me just make this real clear. The no-fault law was passed in the early 1970s because relying on the at-fault driver, that system wasn't working in Michigan. It wasn't working because people had to litigate fault to get their bills paid. The people they were suing didn't have enough insurance coverage. And if they didn't have enough insurance coverage, they didn't have enough assets. So the same kind of problems you're hearing coming up now with these new laws were the problems they were facing in the 50s and the 60s, and there's inundating our courts. So we said, let's come up with a new system. And no fault is essentially health insurance for using your automobile. And what it says is that if you're in your own automobile, you and the people who live in your household, if you are in a crash, we're going to pay for your medical expenses, 3 years of work loss. We're going to give you those no matter what, in terms of whether you're at fault or not at fault or partially at fault. All you have to show is that you were in an accident, and you're guaranteed those benefits. So for 40 years, whether you knew it or not, you were driving around with this assurance that if something went wrong in your car, you were going to be fully covered. Your spouse was going to be fully covered. Your children were going to be fully covered, right? And the other thing that is totally underappreciated about the no-fault law is that it protected us as consumers from being sued for the lifelong medical care of somebody that we accidentally may have hurt. Real quick story. I'm going to give pseudonyms here for the people involved, not giving anything away. But here's the gist of the story I had. Rachel's my client. She's got her son in the car, Ryan. And another person by the name of Georgia is on her way home from work. Georgia's a nurse. She's doing, she's got a family. She's a good person. She accidentally turned in front of Rachel, right? She didn't mean to. Rachel was seriously hurt. Ryan was seriously hurt. For Georgia, she knew that she could be sued for limited damages, pain and suffering. But what she didn't know, before the fact, I found out she knew this later, found out later, is that she had the relief that she wasn't going to be liable for Rachel's medical bills. Rachel had coverage through no fault. Rachel was fully covered. Rachel didn't have to sue Georgia for all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical care. Okay? So when you look at your declaration page, you'll notice the liability insurance premium. That is actually very low. If you compare liability insurance to other states, ours is way low, okay? Because you can't be held liable for those medical expenses. In other states where you have the medical that can be recovered from the at-fault driver, their liability insurance is so much more because their liability insurance company could have to pay all those bills if you were at fault. So the old law said Georgia didn't have to pay those. She had to pay a limited amount of damages. Rachel and Ryan were fully covered, and everybody went on with their life. Okay? Now what do we have? We have a shell of that former system. Okay? We no longer have the insurance law that requires all of us to be fully covered. It allows us to make a choice to be very partially covered. And the flip side of that that's been touched on, but I just want to reinforce that, is that even if you want to protect yourself with the lifetime coverage, you are now driving in a completely different world here in Michigan, where if you make a mistake one night and you hit somebody that's got those low limits, you could be held liable for a whole bunch more money than you ever could be held liable for. And that's the same for businesses. Businesses, their vehicles are used on the roadway. They can now be held liable for lifelong medical care if their employees make a mistake. And so all of you as consumers, you might want to say, hey, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to buy lifelong medical care. I don't think I'm going to have to pay. I'm actually probably going to pay a little bit less because they kind of changed the rules there. So even if I get lifetime care, I should get a little reduction. But I want to make sure I'm fully covered on the liability claim. Well, guess what? You're going to pay more because you're going to have to buy so much more liability insurance coverage, and they're going to jack up the prices on that, and you're not going to be better off. So when it comes down to insurance rates being a problem, yes, they are a problem. But there were many other approaches to this issue that never even got a hearing. There were bills put forth by other legislators, other ideas, saying, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, let's keep the care, but let's target the inefficiencies. Let's take out the fraud, let's come up with a reasonable fee schedule, but let's not take out what makes no fault really no fault, and let's certainly not flip the system so that we all now have this increased personal exposure for medical expenses. None of those ideas got a hearing. This was rushed out, and that's where I go back full circle about not reading the laws. And there are some lawyers who actually think these new laws are good for lawyers. I don't think that way, and there are many other lawyers who care about their clients and their care, and they just know that a harsh day is coming. Basically, what's going to happen is that so many people I meet with who've been just afflicted with a sudden tragic accident, whether it's themselves or their family members, I no longer have that silver lining of information saying your reasonable needs will be met. It's no, because of the new law, you're going to get a little money here, and that's going to get dried up, and then you're going to move on to this, and maybe you're not going to have any coverage from health insurance because you're going to lose that, and so on and so forth. There'll be so many more of those conversations. And so in order to really peel back all the issues, it takes time. But on a fundamental level, this law was wrong. It's not the right fix. I support the phrase fix the fix in the sense that, of course, we should fix a fix that doesn't really fix a problem, but the fix shouldn't have happened to begin with, right? So I hold out some hope that there is going to be momentum to maybe take out these laws in the most fundamental way. I'm realistic to know that's not going to happen anytime soon. But let me put this thought in your head too. We got a future ahead where computers are going to be driving our cars, right? We're going to have to balance who's at fault based on the algorithmic principles behind the sensors in our cars and everything else. So if the idea behind turning this over to a fault-based system is that somehow more just or easier to deal with, I can tell you as a lawyer it's not. And going forward in the future, it's going to be more complicated. So I don't know what to do exactly about people going forward who are going to be so severely affected by these laws. They face a harsh reality, and I regret the day where I have to talk to those people. But I really think that this is an opportunity for the people of Michigan, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, to stand up against people who vote for laws they don't read, who vote for laws that take away important protections, and then do it selling you all with this idea, oh, but you're going to get a rate reduction. Like I said before, you're not going to get a rate reduction. And to tie on to Rep. Lisinski's analogy, I like to think of it in terms of food. She used J.C. Penney. What if you went to a steakhouse and you said, I want the filet? And they said, okay, the filet's going to be $50. And then the filet comes out and they said, oh, no. We actually have you a hamburger from McDonald's. Are you cool with paying $50 for it? You're going to say, hell no, I'm not cool with paying $50 for the hamburger. I want to pay $2 for the hamburger. So why the representatives out there are patting themselves in the back that their slashing of coverage for so many people is going to result in a lower price, that's the only logical thing it should result in. The question is whether you should have even offered that terrible choice to Michigan drivers, and I think we're going to see a day here where everyone's going to realize they should have been offered that choice. That choice is overblown, that full coverage made a difference for people, and now we're not going to have it. So I'm not happy about the situation, but at least I'm being truthful about that. All right, thanks a lot.
Well, before I get into what this law is going to change for the rehab providers, I know one of the key things we've heard today is talk about cost. And I wanted to bring a personal story up here so that everyone can kind of take a look at this. Maybe, when you get home tonight or tomorrow, take a look at your own insurance information, see what would happen. There's nothing that's really going to drive any savings. The one thing I want everyone to do at some point, take a look and see what you were paying for PIP coverage in 2018. Take a look at what you were paying for PIP coverage in early 2019, and take a look at what you're paying now and continue to monitor that. Here's the reason why. my insurance policy renewed July 1. The governor signed Public Act 21 into law July 11th, or I'm sorry, June 11th. Prior to that, for almost a year and a half straight, I was paying $76 every 6 months for PIP coverage. I've been in the exact same house. I live about 4 miles east of here. Nothing's changed, same vehicles, same everything. Policy renews July 1. I'm now paying $268 for PIP coverage. Nothing's changed. Why is that? Because the insurers know they need to make it seem like they're going to be saving money, so they're already doing that by driving up the overall cost. On top of that, I also knew that as of June 11th, I'm now at greater risk of being sued. So I had to make adjustments in my insurance to make sure that if that did happen, I was going to be covered. Between those adjustments and the increase in my PIP coverage, my auto insurance is now costing me an additional $600 a year than what it was before Governor Whitmer signed this. So take a look at this, take a look at what the overall costs have gone up already and what this is going to end up costing you. And it's just important that you go through and follow this. What I wanted to talk about, though, is the effect that this is going to have on the rehab providers, your physical therapists, your occupational therapists, your vocational counselors, programs that are there and play a critical role in people's lives after an auto accident, sometimes within a year afterwards, sometimes 12 years later, sometimes ongoing for the rest of that person's life. The fee schedule that was proposed in this bill, which is now law, states that the post-acute care providers that has a service that does not have a CPT code or a service that Medicare pays for is only able to charge 55% of what our average charge was as of January 1st of 2019. I can tell you for certain, there is not a post-acute care provider out there that has that sort of profit margin that can absorb that and remain in business. And it doesn't stop there, because then after 2021, when this goes into effect, in 22, we can only charge 54%. And then in 2023, we can only charge 52.5% of what we were charging January 1st of this year. This is not going to allow for these businesses to stay open. In addition to what I do during the day, I am the president of the Professional Trade Association that represents roughly 130 post-acute rehab companies throughout the entire state. If this fee schedule is not changed, and keep in mind, this fee schedule will go through and apply to everybody, including those people who are currently receiving services. So even though they'll be able to maintain their lifetime benefits because they're going to get that, all the other aspects of this law change. Okay? So if these providers are not able to be here and provide services for them, that lifetime benefit's not going to make a whole lot of difference. The other thing is, too, these providers provide more services than just to auto accident victims, but they're not going to be here either. The thought that we've always heard from people is, well, my medical insurance will go through and cover it. My Medicare will cover it. Well, the problem is, if your physical therapy or occupational therapy, let's say, is capped at 24 or 36 visits per year, somebody who has sustained serious injuries in an auto accident might need physical therapy 3 days a week for year upon year upon year. So this is why this is going to become a new problem. The other issues, too, is if you are using your physical therapy to provide rehab from an auto accident, once you have exhausted, let's say, the 24 or 36 appointments that you have, what happens if you're walking into your house after coming back from church or the store and you slip and fall and you break an elbow? Well, now you need physical therapy. Well, you don't have any because you've already exhausted that. So that's where the other issue comes in here. So it's really, really important to kind of take a look at that and just really look at what this is going to end up doing. One more thing I wanted to touch on quickly is the importance of lifetime care. There are people who get injured who are going to need care for their entire life. It may not be to the level that they first need, but that lifetime care need is going to be there. You can go to 49 other states, as we heard earlier somebody point out, and Michigan is the only state that ever provided this level of care. The reality is, in other states, if somebody gets seriously injured and they exhaust whatever benefits they have, if they had any. They are able to potentially sue the at-fault driver, sometimes 2 to 3 years later, assuming that driver has any sort of assets. And in the meantime, they exhaust their own money, their family's money, they file for bankruptcy, and a lot of times end up essentially warehoused in a nursing home. That's no outcome of anybody's life. That's no quality of life. Michigan allowed accident victims to return to a productive quality of life in their own homes with their family. That's something that's going to be lost here, and that's why it's imperative that we not only work on some of the things we heard about today, but we have multiple steps that have to be done. We have to correct the things that we can now to allow this industry to survive another day so that we can continue to work on restoring the Michigan no-fault system to what we once had. So again, yes?
You know, you have some experience in this line, that's why I'm asking the question. How got 49 states have all this?
They don't. I mean, honestly, that's the way I can simply put it. Well, they.
I'll take that for just a second. So Medicaid, so people go into medical bankruptcy and go on to Medicaid. And so the fiscal analysis for this from the nonpartisan fiscal agency estimates it will cost Michigan, similar in size and demographic to Florida, what they're paying, and they pay an extra $100 million per year in Medicaid expenses through the state government. So you're absolutely right. The people will be, it'll go onto Medicaid, and the cost is just going to shift to us in a different way. Yep. And so it will limit Medicaid and Medicare expenses that we're typically have now. $100 million of it will now, over the next 5 to 7 years, as people go through medical bankruptcy and go into the system, it'll cost the state about $100 to $110 million per year, which is what the other states pay right now for their auto accident victims who are on Medicaid.
Can I add something to that real quick? So one of the narratives that came out of the side that was pushing these reforms is, well, why does Michigan have to have this law that no other state has? Every other state is fine with their auto crashes. It's not true. Just because you don't have news stories coming out from states about people who don't have their medical care paid for, who've been in a horrible wreck, doesn't mean it's not happening. And in fact, those are the type of stories that don't really turn into news stories, right? Those are the forgotten people. And I haven't heard anybody in any state in America saying they've solved health care, right? Have we solved health care in America? No, right? It's a very complicated, fractured system that doesn't service everybody. And so I can just tell you, from a lawyer, I've never heard any other lawyer from other states saying, oh, why do you guys get that no-fault law? You guys should have our law. It works just fine for people. In fact, most attorneys I talk to from other states, they hear about our law, like, really? You can do that for your clients? Wow, that's a great system. That's really good for people. And for so long, they would say, yeah, but now I have to say, they're basically now adopted your wisdom or lack thereof. So, sorry. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, just one really quick thing in closing. The one important thing that all of us in here are able to go through and do is make sure that we are educating our family, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, anyone you come into contact with, because so many people in Michigan do not understand what we had, do not understand what happened here. And we need to make sure that everybody knows. And so by you taking the time to be here tonight is a huge step forward. We truly thank you for that. Please make sure that you talk to everybody and educate them about that. Thanksgiving's coming up. I know auto no-fault's not a Thanksgiving table story, but I'll tell you one thing. I often up and joke that whenever my family comes over, they're like, oh geez, here goes Tim talking about no-fault again. But you know what? They understand the system, and they're now able to go out and they're able to talk to people and educate people so that they're able to make appropriate choices and can hopefully impact some of the things that ended up happening here. I wanted to give you guys 2 websites to jot down that you can go and visit and get up-to-date your information, things you can share with family and friends. CPAN, CPAN.us, and then the other one is MIAutoinsurancepromise.com.
Oh, they have the flyer for that.
Okay, so yeah, that's in there. Please check that. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, there's pages there that you can go and like and share. There's short video clips. There's radio interviews that we've done that are up there that you can forward. And it really does a good job in a very short period of time of educating people about some of the things that are happening. So if you can do that, again, it's going to take absolutely every one of us to make these necessary changes so that we can continue to make sure Michigan remains the leader in the care and recovery of people who have been involved in auto accidents. Yes. Yes, it's MI Auto Insurance Promise.com.
And you have a flyer that looks like this, and it has it at the bottom.
Why can't this be put to a vote?
I'm sorry, why can't it be put to a vote?
Yeah.
Well, there's
Decided they want it.
There's been some talk back and forth about potentially putting it onto the ballot. Now this has happened. There's a lot of reasons why at this point in time it's not going to be the overall best bet, but that could be something that later on down the road, if we aren't able to get the necessary changes, that you'll absolutely see happen. This is something that obviously Michigan has had the chance to vote on back in the 90s, but this time it was taken a different direction. And unfortunately, the vote of the people was not really an option.
What power made all of this?
So
There's some power force, and of course, in our world,
So-
God is M-O-N-E-Y.
So that's probably the biggest, right? People were seeing the hit to their pocketbook by what they were paying each renewal and the policy. And so that brought people to their legislators to ask for a change. Different legislators, they've got, Donna can speak to it because she's been around a lot longer, not a lot longer, but a few years longer, but she's been through the process of, they've done research, they've done some comparison across states about what's out there, what are the factors that go into deciding an auto policy, auto insurance for a state, and different legislators came to different conclusions on to what the solution was. So the solution we're seeing is the solution that the majority, which is in the hands of the Republicans right now, felt was the best option to solve the problem. But as you've heard, there are different takes on how to address the issue and still offer real cost savings. Right now, the Republican majority and the governor felt a lot of pressure from the public at large to offer up a solution. I think we can probably agree at this point that what was signed into law may not be that solution that we were looking for. And what is that going to look like? Well, that's going to look like we need people reaching out, staying in touch, being informed, and asking your state government for a solution that works. That means you need to be involved. You need to be monitoring your rates. You need to reach out to your legislators. And when you hear people in the community expressing some of this frustration, encourage them to reach out to their representatives too, so that there is a demand that a fix to what this law is be considered going forward. At this point, the legislature and the governor signed this into law. So looking at the timeline that was laid out over the next couple of years, we're going to be looking and reflecting on how this is impacting citizens, how this is impacting cost, how this is impacting providers, and we'll have to be making adjustments on the way. But that's what it comes down to, absolutely, money. Who's paying it? Where is it going? And are we getting what we expect for what we're paying for? So I really appreciate all the questions along the way. I think that was probably a better way of addressing it because this issue is so meaty, and I appreciate the patience. We have some experience and knowledge in front of you, so we'll open the floor to these questions to try to get them answered. Whether you've been studying this for 2 or 3 years, whether this is something we've been studying for at least a year, you got
the thumbnail sketch of what you need to know. But we've asked the DIFs, the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, to continue to educate the public as to what these changes are going to look for. So keep your eyes open. I'm hoping there will be some kind of perhaps TV campaign, commercial campaign, public outreach, as well as perhaps online, email information to help continue to, so people don't wake up July 1st, 2020 and be caught off guard. Yes?
Throughout the time of my accident, my family and friends stood by my side. And I was able to meet this beautiful wife of mine online. I think it was matched out, no, on disability. Alright, well, I'm getting the orders back from the wife. So, well, I'm just don't change to no fault. Yeah, well, just.
Yeah. Don't think that this can't happen to you, right? I saw some hands up. Yes.
This is supposed to be saving us money.
Yes.
And the way I understand it, I mean, who doesn't take somebody else in their car? So that means we all have to have this $1 million rider. That's gonna cost us money, among other things. Where does she think this is saving us money? This is just.
I just want to remind you, before we place all the blame in the department of the governor, that the governor can either sign on to or veto only what the legislature sends her. So know that this was a brainchild of the legislative majority. This was their solution. This is what they brought her. And
But being that this is costing us money, we should have been able to vote.
And as was mentioned, this is a possibility. People are considering a citizen-led initiative to request, and that is our power. Did you have something to add?
Well, I just want to point out that citizen-led initiatives are a double-edged sword. And there are very powerful and very wealthy players, particularly here in the Detroit area, who were a formidable influencer in the governor's discussion and her ultimately in the decision. And it was the very threat of taking this to the ballot, and not the right people taking it to the ballot, but those other folks taking it to the ballot, that really drove concern. So there was a sense that, well, at least we get some of the improvements that we need, although I argue personally that we failed to achieve any real improvements in this bill, and we put ourselves at great risk in doing so. But I think it's important to know that this is a fight between people and money, two types of power in politics, people and money. And so if we fight this as citizens, and I hope we do, we will have to mobilize in huge and significant ways to educate the people around us to come out and vote for this and to vote on the right side of this issue.
Mary?
Are there currently any groups that are suing the legislature or suing the state of Michigan?
I don't.
There are on individual parts of the bill, but not on, there's no lawsuit that would undo the entire new law.
And I think in order for that to happen, there's still things that have to go into effect before they can challenge it too.
I do believe that if we had the information about the financial standing, how much money do you have? How many people are you taking care of medically? If we knew some of those things, instead of only knowing we're sitting on $13 billion, or we're sitting on $18 billion, well, if it's going up by such a big margin, where is it going, and how many people are we taking care of? What are the administrative costs?
That is great, and that's part of that audit, review, and report that will be taking place systematically, and it's not just being reported to the governor, it is being reported to the legislature, and it is also being reported to the public going forward on the MCCA. It's important that you kind of keep your eyes open to that, but also remember, opting out of unlimited is opting out of MCCA.
But the only thing we know is that our rates go up. We don't know how many people, where the money is going. There's no accounting that I've ever seen any place about where are they spending the money. I know they supposedly spend 3 times more for a hospital visit than I pay, or than Medicare pays for me. Okay, they claim it's 3 times more. They talk about fraud. Well, how is the fraud occurring?
That is the fraud.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it, because whenever there's money involved, there's always fraud.
There have been bad actors in the secondary trauma rehab space. There have been bad actors in the hospital space. That's why I think everybody agrees that transparent fee structures that are set by the legislature and signed into law are needed in order to manage the costs of care and to not be vulnerable to that type of fraud. But the reality is that we wrote a law to deal with and passed a law to deal with a few bad actors, when the vast majority of rehab providers are in this work as nonprofit organizations. They are providing us extraordinary levels of care and expertise at very, very reasonable rates. And those stories of fraud were manipulated in the media in order to convince us all, very conveniently for the insurance companies, to convince us all that we needed some sort of significant change. But what we needed was more transparency on the MCCA. What we needed was more transparency on the fee schedule. But, we needed some basic reforms that held all persons involved in this industry accountable, while still delivering the benefits and the care and the sense of security that Auto No Fault gave us as insurance ratepayers in the state of Michigan.
Yes.
I just want to say that I came here kind of prepared, and I know quite a bit about the subject that you were talking about, but I'm walking away with a lot more information. And we really appreciate what you guys have done.